Hello and welcome to a new retrospective where I'll be looking at the Atari 2600 or VCS conversion of Battlezone, which was an arcade game that Atari released back in 1980. And the Atari original arcade was a vector-based title, which the Atari VCS wasn't capable of doing exactly, but it's a pretty decent sort of implementation of that arcade game, which you'll see in a bit. So the reason why I'm covering it today is that Battlezone is one of the very first games that I ever played of my own owned games, really. So my first ever experience of games was on a Commodore 64, and straight after playing my sister's C64, I remember asking my parents if it would be possible if I could get my own computer, possibly a Commodore 64 or something like that, hopefully. But we couldn't afford to get one at the time, so my parents started off by getting me an Atari VCS Junior, and they bought it secondhand from this secondhand shop, and it had a bundle of games with it, maybe about 8 games or something like that. And I remember having one of the best Christmases ever back in 1988 when I unwrapped this Atari Junior and having my very first own sort of console or something to play games on properly on the TV. And what Mum had done, she'd got the 8 games that were bundled with it, and she'd separated them into 2 sort of separate packages or presents. So there was a lot of excitement sort of opening first your Atari console and then opening up the games and seeing these cartridge games with the artwork on. And I mean, Battlezone was one of the first games that I got with it, and there were sort of various sort of other games with it at the time, and one of the other ones was Missile Command, which has this like wonderful artwork on the front. So you don't really see what the game looks like at all. You just got this artwork to kind of feed your imagination. Then you sort of you don't know what you're going to get until you plug it in. But yeah, I think so. I had Battlezone as one of the games. There was Missile Command, there was Combat, Pole Position, and I think Yar's Revenge as well was another one. It was absolutely wonderful Christmas, and straight away after opening the our presents, I've got a skateboard, I think, as well, and sort of playing outside with friends as well on Christmas Day. Sort of really good times. Eventually, when I was able to kind of set this up, luckily we had a spare black and white TV, so we didn't have tellies in our bedroom really, but we had like a portable black and white telly, and my parents set it up in my room temporarily and got the Atari set up. And I think Battlezone may have been the very first game that I put in because it looked right up my street, you know, with the army sort of blowing up stuff theme to it. And actually the reason why I'm really fond of this game in particular is because of the memories I have of playing this with my dad. So my dad isn't a gamer at all. He's 81 now, and he's in his 50s at the time. He wasn't into games, never played in the arcades or anything like that, but he, you know, as a dad, he tried to show interest in what Christmas presents I've got. I remember he came upstairs and was having a look at some of the games, and I was showing him Pole Position, which he didn't really take to. But then I loaded Battlezone up, and my dad was in the army back in the 50s, and he kind of had that, because of that sort of army connection, he took to the game straight away, and he always kind of affectionately refers to this game as the tank game. So often when I go up and see my dad today and I talk about any games that I've bought or anything like that, he'll ask me if I've played the tank game recently, so if I loaded up the Atari and played the tank game. And it'd either be referring to Battlezone, which was this game, or it'd be referring to Combat. We had the 2 tanks either side, which we used to play against each other, and that's kind of a nice thing to have, really, having that connection with my dad, and even on a subject which, you know, he doesn't really have much interest in. But yeah, this is Battlezone, and in particular this is the PAL edition, or the UK edition that I grew up with. So I'll show you in a moment, but the version like released in the US, the NTSC version, has a lot more colours in it. In comparison, it's quite different looking. But this is what I grew up with, and yeah, let's give you a quick game, a bit of a demo. Okay. So I mean, I hadn't really played anything like this at all. I mean, the only similar sort of sort of scrolling 3D aspect game I played was Buck Rogers on the C64, which is in one of the other retrospectives. So this is very different to the arcade machine. In the arcade machine, you don't see the outside of the tank at all, and there are objects to hide behind as well. But at the time, I'd never seen or played the arcade at all, so that didn't bother me at all. The main aim is that you just have these tanks that you have to sort of drive around and shoot as quick as you can before they shoot you. And then you've got this UFO, strange little thing that you have to try and catch somehow. Doesn't shoot back at you at all. It's actually a bit of a distraction because you want to be careful of these tanks, where you want to try and shoot them first. So you see a lot of the tanks, when you move onto them, they show their side, and you need to kind of get them while they're in that view and not forward facing like that. That was lucky. Okay, they're starting to move. That was quick. Avoiding the shots is very difficult. The closer you are, the harder it is to avoid them. So what I did there with that shot was go to the side and try and sort of drive forward out of the way for it to go past. I mean, as a kid I was terrible at this game. I couldn't avoid the shots at all. And if I heard a shot and I couldn't see the tank, then that was pretty scary. I knew I was a goner. So obviously as an adult I'm a little bit better at this game now, so I can get a bit further, and eventually after a while the tanks will start moving. Oh. The tanks will start moving and they'll change colour to yellow, and they'll start getting a lot faster. And it just continues to get faster and more difficult to eventually, unless you're an absolute world champion at this game, you'll be dead pretty quick. I love the sound effects. So the big thing about the Atari is I love those sort of really raw sounding sound effects for the explosions and the shots, and like Yard's Revenge in particular, with that humming sound that you have in the background is just brilliant. But I just remember sitting upstairs playing this for hours along with the other games, and whilst Mum was cooking the Christmas dinner downstairs, you could smell everything cooking and be playing this on a little black and white TV, and it was just such a great Christmas overall for that reason. I love those aeroplanes that fly towards you as well. They're absolutely bastard hard when I was a kid. I could never avoid them or shoot them, but it was a lot of fun to play. And even though when you compare it to the arcade machine, even though it's not as close, and it is an interpretation rather than a full-on conversion, it's a good game in its own right, a good one to play. Some people don't particularly rate it very well. The people who played the arcade machine don't think it's a very good game, which I think is a little bit harsh. But I mean, of course, it's difficult for me to say that because I'm playing this and enjoy it a lot because of the fond memories it invokes, because of the rose tinted specs that I have on as I talk about it. I mean, most people will say that Activision's Robot Tank is a far better game and it has a bit more depth to it. I mean, yeah, by all means, I think check both of the games out. I think this is still something you would enjoy to play. Very quickly, what I'm going to do is show you the NTSC version. So as you can see, it's far more colourful. I'd never seen this until sort of emulation had come out, and started playing Atari games on my PC for the first time, and I was quite shocked actually when I downloaded Battlezone and saw this very colourful little game. It didn't really seem like the Battlezone that I played. It's a lot faster as well in comparison. I didn't really understand the difference between PAL and NTSC, like speed differences, and also the differences with the colours between the two variants of the machine. I mean, even though it looks a lot better than the PAL edition, I kind of prefer playing the PAL edition because that's what I'm familiar with. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you could say that why not play the arcade version, as you have the arcade version available via something like MAME. To me, it's more about playing something that you grew up with, that you have the fond memories of, that connection with, that invokes the childhood memories. And I mean, that's why I load this up quite a bit compared to the arcade version, because of those memories. And I think it's the same for anyone really. It's like, even though Double Dragon on a Commodore 64 was a terrible conversion, I still load it up and play it for a little while, just to get taken back to that time when I first bought it. And you could say, well, wasn't I disappointed when I played it? But not really. I mean, I didn't really know anything better at the time, so I thought it was a reasonable game. That's just how it works sometimes. That's childhood memories for you. And I'm sure you're the same, and you have games yourself that many people find absolute dog shit, but others love. Anyway, that is Battlezone on the Atari. If you haven't played the VCS edition of it, then please do check it out. I think it's a good little game. Don't expect an arcade perfect conversion. I mean, you shouldn't do anyway on a piece of hardware which is built in the late 70s, but it's a good fun game in its own right. So yeah, check it out. Before I finish quickly, one really quick memory that comes to mind about this game as well. So back when I had my VCS, we didn't get many games very often because they were quite pricey, even back in sort of the late 80s and early 90s. Buying a second-hand Atari game even could cost you anything from sort of £10 to £20 in some shops. It was very expensive compared to picking up a budget C64 title. But I remember in particular my brother John, who's my older brother, he was sort of posted in, so he actually borrowed this game without my permission. He was stationed in Northern Ireland at the time in the army, and he had his own Atari, and he popped over once while I was at school and saw that I had an Atari and spotted this Battlezone game, and said, "Oh, can I borrow this?" And my mum strangely just said, yeah, go for it. And I get home and I'm kind of going and load Battlezone up, and I can't find it. So where's Battlezone? It's gone missing. And my mum turns around and admits, "Oh yeah, your brother's borrowed it for a bit. It'd be fine. He'll give it back." And I was like, "Oh my god!" Because previously, what had happened, I had something before. I can't remember exactly what it was, and my mum had lent it to my brother and never got that back at all. Basically, so I was thinking that Battlezone was completely lost, and I couldn't play this game at all. And sure enough, I didn't get it back until something like a year or 2 years later till he come back. And every time I used to see him, I used to pester him about this game. But that's how much I loved it. It was one of my favourites on the Atari, along with Missile Command and Yars' Revenge, and I'll probably do a quick video of them as well at some point. But I'll always remember that, and it's just a lovely game. This particular copy is what my wife bought me at Christmas as a present, which was really nice to see. It's quite nice condition, and yeah, it was nice to actually load it up on Christmas Day, which was like 30 years to the day when I originally played it back as a kid. Unfortunately, I didn't get a skateboard though, but that's probably just as well, because yeah, I'm terrible these days, and I'll probably end up breaking a bone in my old age. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this retrospective, and I'll speak to you again soon.